Welcome everyone to the finale of the third season of the Legacy of the North League. If you've been following along, you'll know that this is our second Royalty of the North match because our second season concluded with Jesse being both the points leader and the winner of our Invitational. So the players we're going to be watching today on player one side is going to be Boston Schatteman, who's making his second attempt at a crown. His opponent today is a tough cookie. He's someone who's recently shaken the Toronto Legacy scene with successes on his SCG and NRG circuits, and it's Dom Harvey. So, to help me celebrate the Battle of Toronto's Titans is a special guest commentator, Jarvis Yu. How's it going, Jarvis?
Going well. I'm excited to watch a best of five match between these two players. It's going to be quite the slugfest.
Yeah, a slugfest because both players are playing a mirror match. It is Selesnya lands. Hopefully you guys got a glimpse of those opening hands. I know my introduction was a little bit long-winded there, so we didn't really get a chance to look at their sevens, but both players quickly mulligan to 6 cards. Jarvis, do you want to give like a quick introduction on how the mirror match really plays out in the lands mirror and like what cards are going to be like key factors on winning this matchup?
Yeah, it's not a true mirror. Their builds actually differ by a few cards. Boston has main deck Source of Plowshares and Sphere of Resistance. Dom has Elvish Proclaimers in those spots, as well as a few more artifacts. So, in essence, the core of the deck is still the same. They both have Exploration, they both have Mox Time, they both have Life from the Loam. Generally, whoever has Acceleration plus Loam is favored, but nowadays there are ways to combat the Life from the Loam in the main deck, usually Bajuka Bog or Soul Guide Lantern from both sides. In addition, I would say nowadays the mirror match is often decided by construct advantage. Whoever has bigger constructs that can hit earlier and faster will generally win the game.
Very good, very good. All right. So let's have a look at both players' sixes. Boston's holding onto Misty Rainforest, Urza Saga, Tabernacle, Mox Diamond, Ancient Tomb, and a pair of crop rotations. Dom Harvey is holding on to Forest, Mox Diamond, Urza Saga, Yavimaya, Bajuka Bog, Boseiju, and crop rotation. So there is a dead card, right? Tabernacle pretty much going to be an instant bottom here for Boston. What about Dom? Looks like he's already considering one card, and it is the Yavimaya. So Yavimaya gone for Dom, Tabernacle gone for Boston, and I don't think we're going to be seeing Tabernacle played very often in this matchup. So I think Boston won the die roll, so we're just going to be waiting for him to make his first play. There he goes, starts off with a Misty Rainforest. Dom going to draw his card for turn, going to be a Crucible of Worlds. You want to give a little bit of a insight on Crucible of Worlds? Because I know a lot of, at least MTGO decklists have been cutting it recently.
Yeah, generally Crucible of Worlds is basically for lack of a better term, the fifth Life from the Loam. It is actually faster, and it doesn't take up your draw step, so that's the appeal with it. It actually works extremely well with Exploration because you can just replay the same wasteland over and over without having to do any sort of intermediate steps.
Yeah, I guess the one downside is it is an artifact easily blown up by cards out of the sideboard, and it's also a 3-mana artifact. All right, so Dom starting off with Mox Diamond, pitches a Forest, gonna lean on an Urza Saga as his land drop for the turn. Boston going to crack the Misty Rainforest during Dom's end step, gonna fetch for a Lush Portico. So these are new additions to Legacy decks in general. These are what people have been calling just the surveil lands, just because, enter the battlefield, they surveil. What's your opinion on these ones?
I think most decks that have a way to fetch or like Elvish Reclaimer or something like that should play at least the first copy. You typically see the Scaminator decks play 2 because it's obviously very good to bin like a big creature with them. I think generally you'll see lots of deck play at least 1, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of decks play 2.
I know, like, a lot of Commander podcasts talk about, being very efficient and, not being able to run tap lands nowadays. Do you feel the same sentiment in something like Legacy? Because Legacy is typically a faster format than something like Commander. Does it coming into the battlefield taps really have a huge effect on games?
I think it depends on what type of deck you're playing. I've even managed to fit it into most of the Delver style shells just because I think the opportunity cost of using a fetch land to turn into Surveil 1 is too powerful.
I see. All right. Well, Boston finishes his surveil. He saw a Lush Portico, decided to put it into the graveyard. Gonna draw for his turn, finds a Lava Spur Boots, and plays an Urza Saga of his own. So just as you said earlier, where there's probably going to be a contest of who can make more constructs faster. We're going to see Boston cast the Lava Spur Boots with the Urza Saga that he just played. And going to see if Dom has a response. He does not. Looks like it fully resolves. Boston's just going to pass a turn. Dom draws a Dark Depths for his turn. So now that there's a Dark Depths in a player's hand, and we can talk about it, Lands is typically known for, or like pre-Urza Saga era, I guess, was typically known by being a very prison-style deck and kind of relying on Merit Lodge, the Thespian Stage, Dark Depths combo to make a very quick Merit Lodge and just swing in for 20. Is that something we might be seeing here in this best of 5?
In general, I think that's not the best thing to do because a single crop rotation usually blows it out, usually fetching Caracas. There's sometimes if you think your opponent has something weird, like not of this world, typically from Turbo Depths, you would actually wasteland the staged Dark Depths instead. But that's sort of a corner case that doesn't really happen that much anymore.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Boston going to draw for his turn after Dom plays his Crucible of Worlds. So this is a prime setup for seeing Dom play an Urza Saga out of the graveyard if needed. It is going to be sacrificed after this third chapter ability on his next turn. But Boston going to draw for his turn. He finds a Soul Guide Lantern. Now he's deep in the tank. Looks like he's quite land light. He does have this pair of crop rotations, but he has an Ancient Tomb. This allows him to create constructs if needed as well. I don't know how soon. Do you have do you have to really feel the flow of the game to start to know when to make constructs? Because we saw Dom, instead of making a construct, he decided to play that Crucible of Worlds. So do you have any tips or advice of any people who's picking up lands when they should start maybe trying to create those constructs and flooding the board to apply pressure? Or are there just better things to do?
Well, there's not like a genuine heuristic, and I think heuristics are overused anyways. Here, the reason Dom played the Crucible was if Boston had a Wasteland, Dom would basically take forever to be able to play that Crucible out. Whereas Boston doesn't really have anything better to do except like tap his Ancient Tomb and create a construct, and he can still give the crop rotation off of his green source.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll see what Boston wants to do here. He is very deep in the tank. Looks like he is just going to pass the turn. Yep, I'm going to untap. Draws for his turn. There's a Life from the Loam. So now his hand is Life from the Loam, Dark Depths, Bojuka Bog, crop rotation. Looks like he is going into his main phase, ticking up that Urza Saga to a third chapter. I think he's holding priority because there is that crop rotation trick that he could do. So you want to just explain the crop rotation trick?
Yeah. So when a Saga has their final ability on the stack, the Saga will not be destroyed until the final ability resolves. So here, Dom could either make a construct or float mana from the Saga. Still with the third ability on the stack, he can cast crop rotation, sacrificing it to search for another land, and still get the third ability Saga of Urza Saga to go through, searching for an artifact that costs 0 or 1 exactly.
So he basically gets two uses out of this, right? He either gets the extra mana or he gets a construct, but he also turns a land that's going to be destroyed anyway into another land. So he doesn't really lose out on mana, is what you're saying.
Right.
So it looks like in response to Dom, so Dom floats 1 mana. That's what he chooses to do with the Urza Saga. He is going to cast that crop rotation, sacrificing the Urza Saga. In response, Boston's going to activate the Ancient Tomb, generate 2 mana, and activate the Urza Saga ability to create a construct. I know this is probably an easy pick for most people that do play Legacy, but if those are tuning in who are just finding out or wanting to learn more about Legacy, is there a reason why Boston activated that Urza Saga to make that construct before seeing what Dom finds from the third chapter of Urza Saga?
Yeah, a lot of Saga decks, even in Modern as well, play one Pithing Needle. So if you don't activate it before the search resolves, Dom could simply just get Pithing Needle and name Urza Saga.
Now, would that be like a viable strategy? Dom is in Urza Saga deck himself. Is that like typically worth it?
I think with Dom having the Crucible, it wouldn't be wise to Needle the Saga because he has access to more sagas than Boston currently does.
All right, so off of the crop rotation, Dom finds a Wasteland, and then from the third chapter ability, he finds an Expedition map. Dom going to use that Wasteland immediately, go after Boston's Urza Saga, but Boston going to retaliate with a crop rotation of his own, turns the targeted Urza Saga into a Bajuka Bog. This gets rid of Dom's graveyard. So that Wasteland and the Urza Saga no longer accessible through the Crucible of Worlds. So you touched upon this really early on, especially during the intro, where controlling the opponent's graveyard is really important. And we saw this here, right? What's the impact of getting Bajuka Bogged here?
Well, it means Dom's original Saga and Wasteland cannot be replayed off the Crucible of Worlds for free. I think that was initially his plan instead of using the Expedition map. Mm-hmm. And also, like, it used to be the case that if you set up, if you Bajuka Bogged your opponent's Bog, that would be the end of the game in the Land's Mirror, assuming both of you had a similar amount of acceleration. That's no longer the case because of Urza Saga. It gets a lot more complicated than that nowadays.
True. All right, so Dom did activate that Expedition map, found a Wasteland, went after Boston's Lush Portico, cutting Boston off of green. Boston then draws for his turn, finds the Sphere of Resistance, but plays the Soul Guide Lantern, gets rid of Dom's Wasteland that he cracked, and now Boston just doesn't have green mana. How important is green mana in the Selesnya Depths deck?
In the Selesnya Lands deck, it's pretty important. I mean, like, crop rotation and Life from Loam don't work without green.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, like, they're pretty color light in the first place, or they run a lot of utility lands that are off color. Like Bajuka Bog is a prime example. I guess you could say they're off color, but Caracas is also like a land that generates white as well. But yeah, it is from your perspective, is Dom cutting Boston off of green mana? Like, I guess he had really nothing else to do. I'm not sure if that's exactly what he wants to be doing. I mean, he does have the Life from the Loam too.
I think the play is good, honestly. Like, assuming there wasn't a Soul Guide Lantern there, the Wasteland would have been recurred like a bunch by the Crucible of Worlds again.
All right, Dom played the Bajuka Bog, exiled Boston's graveyard. Boston going to draw. He draws a Thespian Stage. And we're going to see the Sphere of Resistance kind of just sitting out in Boston's hand. Dom has the Elvish Reclaimer that you noted, or you brought to the attention that this was kind of the main difference between the two players' decks, is that Dom is playing the full set of Elvish Reclaimers in the main board, where Boston has those Sphere of Resistances. Do you think Boston's really going to feel having those Sphere of Resistances in these first two games? It is a best-of-5 match, so game 1 and 2 are going to be non-boarded games. So we'll see how these Sphere of Resistances impact Boston's draws.
It really is just a function of how many he ends up drawing per game. I think in general he would prefer not to draw them, but there could be some games where he just has a really explosive hand, gets out early with Urza Saga, and does manage to like get a very slight tempo lead, which would kill Dom.
I guess that's where you highlight the importance of who has the acceleration in their opening hand, right?
Right.
All right, so Boston going to swing in with this construct, brings Dom down to 12, going to activate the Ancient Tomb and activate the Thespian Stage. Going to copy Dom's Beseiju. This lets him get a source of green mana. Dom going to draw for his turn, finds a second Elvish Reclaimer. And Dom just not finding any good... I guess this is a celebration on Boston's part, where Boston's doing a very good job of nullifying this Life from the Loam in Dom's hand without even knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dom going to start off with Elvish Reclaimer, going to play the Dark Depths, leaving only a Life from the Loam in his hand. And we're going to see what Boston top decks here. But this is a very dangerous situation, right? I guess Dom is leaning on the fact that he has the crop rotation ability from the Elvish Reclaimer. Because he has that Dark Depths, Boston can do a really common trick where he uses his own Thespian Stage to just copy Dom's Dark Depths.
That's why typically you see both players will side down to one Dark Depths in these mirrors, because it's just a liability to draw too many of that card.
Boston draws the Maze of Ith for his turn. Now he's deep in the tank. So what can Boston be thinking about here in this situation?
Well, he can think about whether or not he wants to play Mox Diamond, which I think he's probably going to end up doing. If he does that, are we going to cycle with the Soul Guide Lantern looking for a different land to discard to Mox Diamond? And past that, what do we crop rotation for if we're going to crop rotation?
So if we are, I typically think like if you are going to crop rotate, like would it be too early to crop rotation?
Well, maybe not, because like here's something he could do. He could cast Mox Diamond, discard the Maze, float black from Bojuka Bog, crop rotate it away for Dark Depths, use Ancient Tomb to use the stage to copy Dark Depths, then use the floating black mana to move Lava Spur Boots to the Merit Lage and attack.
In that case, does he necessarily need to crop rotation for Dark Depths, or could he go for another land? Because he can use the Dark Depths from Dom, right?
No, he can't, because of the untapped Reclaimer on Dom's side.
Okay, do you want to expand on that just a little bit?
Well, if you target Thespian Stage targeting Dom's Dark Depths, you can just activate Reclaimer, sacrificing it.
All right, so that's why he needs a Dark Depths of his own, right? So that the Reclaimer can't really counterspell, which is something that I've heard you say quite a few times. Is crop rotation is very very much acts like a counterspell in this matchup,
right? And that's I think exactly what Boston's trying to figure out. Can I afford to play around crop rotation, given only one of Dom's crop rotations is gone? What's the likelihood that the last card in his hand is one of the 3 remaining crop rotations? Because if you do all of this, and with the equip on the stack, Dom goes for Karakas, it's kind of a disaster.
Yes. All right. Boston really deep in the tank here. So, so going for the crop rotation into Dark Depths, into equipping Lava Spur Boots, like that is would you call it like a risky play? Is there a safer play that involves just drawing off of the Soul Guide Lantern and seeing what's off the top?
So the problem is, if you draw off the Soul Guide Lantern, if it's not a mana producing land, it doesn't work out because you'll be one short. Because otherwise, you would need all of the mana. Otherwise, you need the 2 from Ancient Tomb. The stage is tapped to copy. The black floating is for equipping the Lava Spur Boots, and the Mox Diamond mana is for crop rotating.
I see. And then I guess because of these double Reclaimers, the longer the game goes, the worse it gets for Boston, right? That's why we're trying to figure out, or that's why he's trying to find a way to end the game right here and right now.
So basically, I think the calculation is, if Dom has crop rotation, it's bad for me, but if I wait, I can't really do it next turn because it will just get blown out by Dom just simply searching for Wasteland with one of the Reclaimers. Because basically, Dom could just simply activate Reclaimer, sacrifice Dark Depths, go get Wasteland, untap, Wasteland the Ancient Tomb, replay Wasteland off of the Crucible, Wasteland the Bojuka Bog, then basically Boston would have no mana. So I think if you think about this all the way through, I think the realization is we should go for it.
Yeah, so now I'm starting to realize the power of the fifth Life from the Loam Crucible of Worlds here, and how you said, how you even mentioned like it is faster than Life from the Loam, right? I didn't realize you can go, fetch for Wasteland, activate the Wasteland, replay Wasteland, strip away 2 sources from Boston. That is a pretty hefty play.
Yeah. Well, way back when, Life from the Loam used to be more powerful because it's very good with cycling lands.
All right, so we're gonna see Boston finally make his move here. Doesn't have a source of green. Oh, he does have the.
Well, he does, but you don't want to use that one.
Yeah, so he figures that out. Plays the Mox Diamond, discards Maze of Ith, going to float black mana, gonna crop rotation the Bojuka Bug. So I think this is the play that you had described earlier. Finds his own Dark Depths there, and just gonna go for it, right?
Yeah, and Dom's good enough. He says, "Yeah, the Boots is going to move to it with the black floating. That's game. Because it could only be crop rotation from Dom's side to save him from death there."
Yeah. So that was a very quick game number 1. We're gonna go see game number 2. We will see you guys in the next one.